Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're really excited to be hosting today's webinar, Digital Retail, the Revolution. This is a part of our series of webinars we're calling March Madness or Webinarch Madness. And it's every Wednesday in March. We're bringing you case studies, thought leadership, best practices. So you can sign up for the remaining 2 sessions. They're also going to be really great. But we're really excited about today's presentation. It's actually a replay of a session we had at our conference this October called Karma. This was the #1 ranked session by attendees. It's by the CEO of Eloquii, a fast fashion plus size brand that's really changing the industry. Mariah, she has some really great thoughts about digital retail, where it's going next, where it is today, and how things are changing. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the presentation, and we'll catch up with you at the end.
What I wanted to do today is, I know we're going to talk a lot about customer insights, right? Using data to power the customer journey and make smarter decisions. But I thought maybe we'd back up and start with something a little bit broader, which is what's happening in digital retail. And I run a company called Eloquii.com, which is my favorite thing to talk about, and I'll talk about it in a second. But what we wanted to do, or what I wanted to do, is talk about where digital retail has been in the past 5 years, where it is today, and where it's headed. And I think the thing that I have noticed as I look into the future is that there's a tremendous amount of change, right? And the change is lightning fast. So change that used to feel evolutionary and that you could kind of see around the corner now feels revolutionary. It's happening and coming at us faster than it ever has before. And we, as marketers, as owners of P&Ls, as drivers of e-commerce, it's our responsibility to know what's happening today and now, but it's also our responsibility to think about and try to see around the corner around what's next so that we can plan, because planning's fun. Okay, Eloquii. So this is my favorite topic, so I'll try to keep it short. So what is Eloquii? Eloquii is a vertically integrated fast fashion e-commerce business for women's sizes 14 and up. We were launched about 2.5 years ago. We were, interestingly enough, sort of a spin out of The Limited, so half of our company, and the official global headquarters of Eloquii are in Columbus, Ohio, the Buckeye State. We believe that this customer is wildly underserved. She represents 65%, or actually 67% of American women, and that there is a true opportunity to give her fashion like she's never been served before. So that is what we do all day long. And we are right now online only, and that will probably change in the future, although today we're really going to speak about digital retail. Okay, so let's dial it back to 2011. What was happening in digital commerce? Interestingly enough, 2011 was the year that CUSTORA kind of got off the ground. Is that right, Corey? Yeah. Okay, so 5 years ago. So what was happening? So Facebook commerce. Do you guys all remember that Facebook was telling us that we were all going to be selling things on Facebook, and Facebook was going to be a great retail channel? I was running another startup at that time, and we were betting big on Facebook commerce. That didn't exactly quite work out for us. But Facebook commerce was the big chat. You guys may remember flash sales were everywhere. There was a flash sale for everything that you could have wanted to buy, including a dog leash. Flash sales are still around, but the hype may be slightly less than it was 5 years ago. There was an app race. So if you didn't have an app, you were told you had to get an app. If you had an app, you had to build it faster. You had to be both Android and iOS. It was all about apps. And it's still all about apps, but maybe there's something else around the corner that we'll talk about. We were not 5 years ago mobile first. Mobile was really important, but the customer, when we thought about the customer journey and devices, we were really focused on desktops and laptops, and we were not thinking when we were building products of a potentially mobile first journey. Well, maybe the really smart people were, but the majority of us were not. Curated box businesses. Anyone ever heard of Stitch Fix? That started about 5 years ago. Then there was BarkBox. I think there's probably something called Boombox. And the box business really got off the ground, and it was this whole idea of curation and personalization delivered in a high-touch manner that was driven by automated data, really sort of took off. And lastly, as is relevant to CUSTORA, there were a lot of grumblings of big data. There was so much data. What do you do with it? What's the signal? What's the noise? Where do you store it? What questions are you asking? What are you going to get out of it? To give a little framework on how far CUSTORA has come in these 5 years, I was emailing with Corey the other night, and he was letting me know that 5 years ago when CUSTORA was getting off the ground, they were 3 people working out of a junior one-bedroom apartment. They were super stressed about the fact that the servers they needed from AWS were costing them $5,000 a month to house and power sort of the data that they were processing. Bet that number has grown slightly. They are now 35 employees. They've grown from 3 to 35. Another couple of fun facts. Corey was letting me know 5 years ago, Snapchat didn't exist. Think about that. Today, messaging apps have more traffic and more visitors globally than social media communities, right? So WeChat, Snapchat, dwarf Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. Facebook is going to catch up with that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And when CUSTORA was having conversations with prospective clients and retailers, the number one question they were getting was, what's LTV? I'm going to hope and make an assumption that everyone in this room is totally down with LTV or CLV, as we like to call it. So that was happening 5 years ago. Let's take a look at what's happening today. You guys have heard of this thing called Amazon, right? So the whole presentation could have been 5 years ago, Amazon was like this. Today, Amazon is like this. 5 years from now, Amazon owns the room. For those of us in the apparel space, you know, Amazon has made a very pointed statement. Is anyone here from Amazon before I start to go into this? Yes, love you guys. Awesome. All right. Buying some stock later today. Okay. So, as you know, Amazon has made a statement saying that they're going to go from owning 7% of the apparel market to 20% of the apparel market by 2020. It's kind of a significant leap. So for those of us in the apparel business, when I wake up every morning, I'm like, today I'm going to go fight Amazon. It is going to be a great day. I feel really good about it. I'm definitely going to win. So Amazon is happening. On-demand everything, right? So when I say on-demand, people, you guys must think, well, Uber. But you can also do a lot of other things on demand. You can get your booze with Minibar. You can get a massage with Seal. You can get a blowout with Glam Squad, which I obviously did not do this morning. But basically, you can become a shut-in because it's all going to come to you, right? On-demand everything. Content marketing. So content marketing is nothing new. The new piece today is video. If you haven't heard, you got to be making videos. You got to be displaying them on Facebook. The optimal time is 10 seconds. The click-through on Instagram on a moving image is much better than on a static image, et cetera, et cetera. I shouldn't say the click-through, the click. So it's all about video content marketing, and we'll talk about where that might go in 5 years. Mobile first. I mean, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We all talk about mobile first. At Eloquii, when we launched, again, 2.5 years ago, 38% of our traffic was coming from mobile. Last week, it was 55%. Now, we've done some things to kind of push that, right? But that is, in many ways, just a natural evolution of how the customer is engaging. Maybe she's mobile first. Maybe she's mobile in the middle. Maybe she's mobile last. But she's certainly more mobile than she was 5 years ago. New trend equals no trend. So for those of us in the apparel business, what I believe is that digital allows for visual saturation, imagery saturation at an extremely fast pace. So let me give you and that has sort of motivated the collapse of the trend cycle. So here's an example. The runways show that the color marigold is hot. P.S. Marigold is in fact hot. Marigold is a hot color. Then the FLOTUS wears it. Then Beyonce wears it. Then J.Lo wears it, but don't tell J.Lo that she was third behind Beyonce in the FLOTUS. And then all of the bloggers are wearing it, and all of a sudden, marigold is the thing, and the customer's like, well, I've got to wear marigold right now. And then you're thinking, well, wait a second, we were going to be showing Marigold in 4 months. No, 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 no. You've got to show Marigold right now because the demand is right now. And so trend cycles that used to look, I'm going to do this backwards, kind of like this, now go like this. So fast fashion has become faster and faster. And your win or our win is all about responsiveness. And that we have seen accelerate with the power of really social media and messaging apps faster than I ever thought that we would. And it makes running this kind of a business an interesting opportunity. And then lastly, digital commerce today, you know, this is the blind optimistic point that I really believe in, which is I believe the digital medium fosters tolerance and inclusion. So Eloquii is about inclusion. We would make the sizes 0 through 12 clothes, no problem. We happen to start at a size 14. We just don't think another size 4 skirt needs to exist in the world. We think the world has got plenty of size 4 skirts. But what digital has done is and via social media, via all of these messaging apps, via the power of video on these social media platforms, it allows individuals and communities to tell stories. And those stories in the year 2000 would have been heard by maybe if it made it the nightly news, a few million people. Today, one story of one person can be heard by millions of people in 48 hours, right? So we, I believe, as hopefully a population, are becoming more empathetic, more aware, more enlightened about our neighbors, the people around us, what they deserve, who they are, and what the future looks like, right? So it's no longer these sort of, the interesting thing about digital is that we're all sitting behind screens, but I believe that it, in many ways, via the storytelling and viral capacity, brings some humanity to the people that are behind the screens. And at Eloquii, we certainly stand for inclusion. All right, so what's next? Digital commerce in 5 years. Now, because the rate of change is no longer evolutionary, it's revolutionary, I would say that 5 years could be 5 days, could be 6 months, give or take, right? So this is really what might be around the corner much faster than we think. Pricing. Who loves to talk about pricing, right? Pricing is like my favorite thing to talk about. So if you look in Wikipedia, there are 26 different kinds of pricing strategies. I'm going to take a bet that most of us in the room use either EDLP, everyday low price, or some combination of cost plus and high-low pricing strategy, right? Question I keep asking, and I think as a group, we do a really good job in the industry talking about brand and talking about merchandise and talking about value. But I wonder if we don't talk about price because maybe it's a little bit dirty. Maybe we're not really sure how to talk about it. But I think we should be talking a lot about price. And the reason I think that is because I think if we took digital out of the picture, well, let me put it this way. Is the customer paying less today for the same good, the same item, than she was 15 to 20 years ago? I would say yes. I think digital erodes pricing power because our customers, whether we like it or not, no matter how good our brand is, no matter how loyal she can look at 5 other prices in 90 seconds, right? She couldn't do that easily 16 years ago. I'm using 16 years ago because I'm referencing Corey's beautiful chart, 2000, 2008, 2016. So are we all in a race to the bottom? No matter how much we get off of a promotional cadence, does digital still erode pricing power? I would be in the camp that votes yes. Makes me excited to think about what CUSTORA is doing with pricing propensity modeling that maybe they'll be talking about later. But what at Eloquii are we doing? What do we think about? I think a lot about dynamic pricing. I think a lot about it, and the team, I think, wants to like throw something in my head every time I mention it. But in different industries, like the airline industry, like events, like hotel rooms, pricing is wildly variable based on supply and demand. And we as consumers Totally expect it. That flight to Columbus has got one seat left. Guess what? You're going to pay more for it, right? There is a concert that unfortunately no one wants to go to. Those tickets are going to be really cheap. What if dynamic pricing was existed in other categories? I'm thinking specifically of apparel, and was really driven on scarcity, was really driven around the laws of supply and demand. And I want to make a distinction here. I think there's a conflation between dynamic pricing and personalized pricing. I'm not talking about the kind of pricing where, one person, I might have data about, first party customer data that says this customer is going to be willing to pay more than this other customer. That might be a little freaky. We may get there, right? And that might be where we're all headed. But at this point, what I mean by dynamic pricing is purely around the merchandise. Is it a good piece of merchandise? Does she love it? Would she pay more for it? Would she think it was a game to know that it was running out and that she was going to have to pay more for it? So at Eloquii, we talk about something called FOSO, and we have branded this with our customers. FOMO is fear of missing out. At Eloquii, FOSO is fear of selling out. So we do limited runs of our products. We drive brand equity around this idea of selling out. We openly talk about FOSO with our customers, and this is our precursor to dynamic pricing. We will be testing dynamic pricing as soon as possible, and it may be a total failure, but I think it's something in the digital space that we all need to talk about more. All right. Content. Let's just look at Jemima Kirk's face here for a second. She's peering into the future and thinking, what's going to happen with content, right? That's like what the direction the director gave her was like, Jemima, really like go deep on content in the future. So we're all talking a lot about video content. It's the new, it's the thing everyone's got to do. You got to do it because everyone's doing it. But what happens down the road with video content? What do brands need? Well, if we're having a pricing issue because digital erodes pricing, then do we need incremental streams of revenue? Maybe. And if we are looking at the great Amazon, these two ladies in the second to last row here, they're producing content, right? Everyone has seen maybe Mozart in the Jungle, any of those original series. So the distribution of content has become more diffuse over time. We as brands have the ability and may decide to actually get into the content game in a far more pronounced way. So what if the next Modern Family was produced by Kohl's or Target? What if the next hit show like Girls was produced by Eloquii or Nasty Gal or Reformation or Urban Outfitters? And it wasn't a branded advertorial piece. It was just great entertainment. And we co-distributed it with other distributors. And it was so good that we actually could sell advertising against it. And yes, we would put in our products, but it wouldn't be the main point. What would be really interesting and sort of the next leap is to be able to have a seamless experience of buying what you want from the TV show while you're watching it, right? Next generation bookmarking. There are a lot of examples of videos on the web or afterwards or on the side. It says buy these 3 things. This is what's being featured, et cetera, et cetera. But what if that could happen while the content was playing? Next generation bookmarking. And that's kind of one of the pieces that's missing. But I think a lot about this, and this is definitely not what we're going to get into and Eloquii's going to get into, but is someone aside from Amazon going to take a stab at producing great content for great content's sake? I will say at Eloquii, we are going headlong into content because if you think about the dearth of fashion merchandise for this customer, it is only matched by the dearth of fashion content for this customer. And if you believe that content, great aspirational content, helps sell product as we do, then this is a massive opportunity that we're going to take down. Okay, conversational commerce. So I could have titled this slide Mobile Strategy, but then if someone asked me one more time what our mobile strategy was, I think I might throw my phone at their head in like a totally respectful and nice way. So conversational commerce, what do I mean by this? It's having a conversation with a retailer or a brand on your phone, placing your order via text, getting all of your logistics, having your customer service conversation all in one channel, which is text, right? Image-based, image-rich. You can do the whole thing via text. In China, you guys are all familiar with WeChat. At WeChat, it's a messaging app. It has your payments. It's chat-based transactions. It's chat-based media. It's, rich with images. Facebook is basically building a clone of it. If you guys order, let's say from Everlane, you know that a lot of the follow-up and the logistics and the customer service comes via Facebook's Messenger app after you've made the purchase, whether it's on mobile or on any devices. So conversational commerce, I believe that this is the place where the rate of change is fastest. Mobile is where you are out of date the moment you deploy it, right? I don't know if you guys feel that way, but when we think about mobile, we're like, are we already behind? Like, we're building it, but we're already behind. And so we had a tremendous amount of analysis paralysis about building an app. And our investors and people that, in the community were like, well, of course you gotta have an app. Like, duh, how can you not have an app? We were like, well, aren't apps going to kind of not be as relevant as they were? I mean, aren't we going to all start to move just to text-based commerce? And I asked 40 of our female employees in their 20s and 30s, half in Columbus, Ohio, half in New York, who are all fashion lovers. They self-selected to work at a fashion company. And I asked them 3 questions. Number 1, what apps do you use on a regular basis, weekly basis? Number 2, do you have any fashion apps on your phone? And it could be any fashion app, not just like an app where you're purchasing. It could be an engagement like Covet, etc. Number 3, if you answered yes to number 2, what are they and what do you do with them? So out of 40 women, and these are cool, awesome, progressive, if you guys ever try to steal any one of our employees, I will find you and it will hurt. These are awesome, awesome women. I mean that with total respect. And 36 out of the 40. So the answer to question number 1, what do you use on a weekly basis? It was banking, dating. That was a little TMI for me, but that's fine. Banking, dating, community, on-demand things like Uber. And there was a 5th one that I really can't remember. But there were basically, it was all around, and, sort of on-demand, i.e. food, et cetera, et cetera. It was all around utility. All around utility. Those were the apps that had the frequency. 4 out of the 40, so we're talking 10%, had fashion apps downloaded on their phone. Really frightened me. This was we were about to pull the trigger on doing an app, and I was like, wow, only 10% of our employee base has a fashion app downloaded on their phone. 2 of those people were in our marketing team who said, oh yeah, actually I don't use these are just for research purposes. And the other 2 were both in our New York office, both in their 20s. One has an obsession with Urban Outfitters and potentially some credit card debt that we need to be concerned about. And the other one loves to look at Zara and ASOS, but she doesn't purchase from them. But she engages on that app all the time. And I thought, so maybe an app for us right now isn't the right way to go, and we're going to pursue conversational commerce. And this is the question that, if I get a chance to talk to anyone after, is what I love to talk about, because I think it's the area where there is the greatest delta and opportunity for continued change. And lastly, don't worry, I'm almost done, but now we're going to talk about CUSTORA. Okay, data. So Corey, when you guys talk about yourself, actually, I'm curious, do you talk about yourself as a data company? Customer analytics of the customer. Okay, so but if I call you, reference you as a data company or not, like it's cool. Okay, I've got the mic. It's okay. Okay, so one of the things that I titled this slide, Data That Drives to Why, Data That Leads to More Questions. And you guys may be thinking, what are you talking about, you pea brain? Data is supposed to answer questions, not drive you to ask more questions. I hope that good use of data actually gets us to ask more questions. So I want to talk a little bit about how we at Eloquii use CUSTORA. I want to echo what Corey said about customer first, and then I want to talk a little bit about sort of this, where CUSTORA may be going with that sort of borders on augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, and how that actually drives further curiosity. So to Corey's point, to Kevin's point, the channel conversation, we still have it, right? But we shouldn't be. We should be talking about customer first, because guess what? That customer, she's on 4 channels. You're measuring that customer 4 different times in 4 different channels. She's on 2 devices. So siloing channels and then devices, you're really duplicating work that could be done just by focusing on the customer first, right? So what is her value to the business? What are her affinities? What is she doing? How often is she doing it, right? What are the risks you see with that customer? And then potentially down the road, what are the margin opportunities with that customer? But what is her journey? Where is she going? What is she doing? What do you know? What do you want to know, right? And then predictive insights. This was, for me, when I first learned about CUSTORA, I think in 2012, this is what got me the most excited, right? I could have the proverbial crystal ball, right? Get to know your customer better, but get to know what she might do in the future, what she might spend in the future, what she might buy in the future, with what cadence would she buy in the future, what does she respond to in the future, right? That is powerful, powerful information, because it allows you to take directive action in the present, right? And as marketers and as drivers of digital businesses, we all got to be all about action, right? That's the beauty of the business we're in, is that we don't have to wait for our brick and mortar. I mean, many of us have brick and mortar components, but the power of digital is the power of today, is the power of action now. So a couple of ways at Eloquii that we have used CUSTORA, probably in a way that CUSTORA didn't anticipate, or actually might not know about, but that has driven greater questions, is so when we do our planning, we look at CUSTORA's percent accurate. Is that right, Vicki? That's what you said. 95% accuracy. We talked to Vicki last week. 95% accuracy of that predictive lifetime value. So we'll say, okay, we have this group of existing customers, and we know over the next 2 years that they are going to deliver this amount of revenue and roughly this amount of margin to the business. That's like an annuity stream, right? So we then use that information not only to deliver revenue projections for the overall business, the fiscal quarter, the fiscal year, but we use that to plan inventory. So our marketing teams and merchandising teams work in silo. It's like this fun experiment. They kind of go off and do their own things and then come together and see how close they are. But we use CUSTORA to validate our buyer model, to know what we can expect our return customers to deliver to the business in the future. And then we make sure that that ties to our inventory plans, right? And it gets a little more complicated than that, but at a high level, that is a way that we have used CUSTORA as a financial planning and inventory validation tool since the beginning. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that was a little, for us, it's a fun fact. And then the second thing is, and this gets to how data can give you bigger questions. It can answer questions that then fuel even bigger questions. So we have been doing some customer research, and this is why I have the yellow sticker, which is the one-time purchase. We noticed we have a fantastic dress business. I'm going to pat ourselves on the back for our dress business, right? Great margin, great ticket, the dresses look great. Wonderful. But what we notice is that a lot of customers, our one-time customers, come in and buy a dress. We're like, huh. Now, a lot of our repeat customers also buy dresses, but really the majority of our one-time customers are buying dresses from us. And we were like, that's so strange because our dress business is so good. And then CUSTORA came in and said, you know, the customer who's got an affinity for dresses and who is making their first purchase on dresses, she's got a good lifetime value, but the customer who's got the affinity for skirts and tops, she's a great customer. She has a really high lifetime value. And we talk to our customers like on the phone. We have an open door policy in both of our offices. Customers can come in at any point in time. We talk to them probably more than they want us to. And we hear from customers, gosh, Eloquii, you're so special. When I think about things that are unique and special, I think about Eloquii. You mean so much to me. And when I have something special coming up in my life, I always want to go to Eloquii. We're like, that's great. Are you buying a dress? Yes, I'm buying a dress. So we think, oh, all right, now we've got a real insight here, which is going to deliver a lot more questions that we've got to answer, which is, do customers think we're too special? How do we get more customers to think about us and buying skirts and tops, think about us for every day, not just the unique, not just the special, right? That insight would not have happened without CUSTORA saying, okay, you're seeing this one-time buyer issue. Well, your dress customer's good, but this other customer's fantastic. So how do you take the steps to get from a dress customer to the skirts and tops customer? Which leads to prescriptive insights. And I know that this is part of CUSTORA's roadmap. CUSTORA will help you, and imagine this, know what to do and when to do it, right? So giving you advice on directive action and in what order to do it. One of the biggest things we wrestle with, or I'll just say I wrestle with, is prioritization, right? 30,000 things to do. What am I valuing? How am I judging what to do first? How do I put those in order? What if you knew, right? I think that's a very, very powerful piece of the puzzle, and that's really where artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence comes into play, which leads me to my very last point, which is if you have that, why do you need all of us? Will this room next year just be full of robots, right? I recently read a book called Curiosity. Has anyone heard or read this book? No. Okay, it's written by a British writer named Ian Leslie, and it's all about the significance of curiosity and how we have to, as a species, remain curious. And it talks a lot about how digital can erode curiosity. I'm actually going to say I don't think digital does erode curiosity. There are three types of curiosity. There's diversive, which is when you've got a question or an itch, you go to the Google, you get the answer, and you're satisfied, right? It's solving the Rubik's Cube. The second is empathic curiosity, which is a curiosity around human behavior and human emotions. Makes sense, empathy. The third is epistemic curiosity. And this is the kind of curiosity that I think great data will only drive further. Epistemic curiosity is the kind of curiosity that fueled people like Benjamin Franklin and Albert Einstein. It's when you know a little bit about something and you perceive that you don't know a lot. And you are deeply curious about what you don't know. So the more that you know, for Benjamin Franklin and Albert Einstein, the more that they learned, the more that they believed they needed to learn. And so don't worry, we'll all be here next year. But know that I think as much as artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence is significant and the power of data is significant in answering questions that we may not even know to ask today, it will fuel us to ask further questions and make us smarter in the future. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks everyone for listening in. We're going to actually leave the webinar open for a few more minutes. In case you have any questions, we'll make sure to follow up by email. We're really excited about our webinar next week as well. It's 2017 Lifecycle Marketing Strategies. We're going to be talking with our partner, Bronto, about some great lifecycle marketing strategies that we've seen in the field. So join us then. It's 2 p.m. next week. It's CUSTORA.com/March Madness, Wednesday, March 21st.